Please support us at patreon.com/BattleGeekPlus.
Welcome to Awesome Video Game Memories, where we talk about awesome memories about video games. I'm Ryan, and the game we're going to talk about today is Resident Evil 2! So, Resident Evil 2 is my personal favorite game in the first 3 games on the PlayStation because it took what was great about the first Resident Evil and improved on it in almost every single way. So, like I mentioned in the previous video about the first Resident Evil, when I played the game, it would not work past the part where Kenneth got eaten by the zombie. So, I took the game back and rented Resident Evil 2 instead, which luckily for me, it worked perfectly. But before that, I was able to play the Resident Evil 2 demo disc that did come with the Resident Evil Director's Cut, which actually did work, and you were only able to play up to the part where you get up to the police station, into the STARS room, and then you're kind of stopped by Ada. And so I remember when I first played this, I thought the opening movie looked pretty good, like, late 90s PC standards, although I did think Leon looked a bit stiff, and he had a pretty big head. I'm Leon. I have a pretty big head, Claire. And plus, the voice acting wasn't as cheesy as the first one. It was still cheesy, but not that cheesy. It's like the director was like, let's put a little more effort. So I want you to do 2 takes of the line this time. But for the most part, the voice acting was pretty good. I did like Paul Haddad as Leon, although I think Paul Mercier and Matt Mercer were better Leons in the sequels. I really liked Alison Court as Claire, because I recognize her as Jubilee from the X-Men. And we do have the iconic voice of Ada, Sally Cahill, who also reprised Ada's role in Resident Evil 4. So the best thing about this game, which was a huge improvement over the first one, was the flow of the game. Now, in the first one, you had to do a lot of backtracking. It was very Metroid-ish. Well, in the second game, you do a little backtracking, but not a lot, but it goes in a straight flow, more of a complete flow. You go to the police station, down to the sewer, then you have to go to the lab, rather than spending the entire time in the mansion. I remember early reports of this game saying, the entire game was going to take place in the police station, and to me, I was thinking a police station isn't even as large as a mansion. How could you have an entire game take place in there? And also about this game too was the puzzles were not as hard to solve as the first Resident Evil. Now, the first Resident Evil, I was a huge moron when it came to the puzzles, but actually most of the puzzles in this game were pretty straightforward. I remember that a puzzle where you have to push the statues to activate that switch, and it was pretty easy to kind of understand the clues they were giving. Now, if there's one thing I felt the first game did better, it was definitely the setting and the atmosphere. In the first game we had, the scary mansion, ooh, and in the second game, you're in the police station, you're in the sewer, you're in a laboratory. It's not as scary as the first game. There's still a couple of scary moments, but overall, I still felt the first game was definitely a lot scarier. And also, in comparison to the first game, which had a huge repertoire of enemies like zombies, zombie dogs, hunters, chimeras, Resident Evil 2, it had a pretty diverse cast of enemies, but not as big as Resident Evil 1. I still remember, being freaked out by the Licker, which was actually a zombie that mutates further, which is kind of crazy. And then you had those giant plants, and you still had the giant spiders. There wasn't as many bosses in this game as the first one, because I played this game first and the first one later. I was definitely overwhelmed by the whole bunch of bosses in the first game. Really the only big boss is William Birkin, who goes around the game, tormenting you, and then in the B game you had Mr. X, which was, another tyrant. And so one of the things I was really anticipating in this game was the giant alligator in the sewer. I remember spoiling this game on various websites, and they say, you're gonna fight this giant alligator in the sewer. I'm like, holy shit, I can't wait for that battle. But then you just kind of shoot it once after it bites that fire thing, and then it's dead. That's it. I was hoping the big giant alligator battle was gonna be epic, like, Hook versus the alligator in Peter Pan, but nope, that's it. That's okay though. Yeah, and I actually did enjoy the relationship between Leon and Ada for most of the game. It didn't come off too forced, and it actually felt pretty natural, even though most of the writing for the Resident Evil games is usually cheesy, but I do enjoy the relationship between Leon and Ada, and when she got shot by Annette at the end, I actually did feel pretty sad. I'm like, no, Ada! So this is what everyone's been dying for. Ugh.
So, this is what everyone's been dying for.
Yeah, Leon, that G-Virus vial could have fallen on a rat and would have created a giant rat monster. Just saying, because, when William Birkin got shot, those rats kind of carried the T-Virus into Raccoon City, if you know what I mean. And also, I remember the fights with William Birkin not being, super hard. I mean, even the end one wasn't really that hard, even at the end of the B game. I actually confess, in, the B game, I thought the fights with Mr. X were definitely very difficult. Oh yeah, I also remember that scene where you're watching the camera and Mr. X looks up at it, smashes it just like that. Like, uh-oh, Mr. X is coming. He's coming to get me. Yeah, so I remember beating Leon's A game pretty easily, and Claire's B game was a bit tougher. It was obviously different. I had Sherry, a bit of rearrangement of the puzzles. There's Brian Irons, who I had to deal with too. But overall, aside from Mr. X, it wasn't really that difficult. And I do confess, it took me a couple of years to finally play Claire A and Leon B, which I heard is actually the canon story for some reason. You actually have William Birkin infecting Sherry with a G-Virus embryo, which is why, in Resident Evil 6, Sherry can actually heal herself. But yeah, it was definitely a very different game than the Claire B game. So I keep wondering to myself, why did I put it off for so long? And also, one of the best things about beating any Resident Evil game is you get unlimited ammo for a certain weapon. I remember getting unlimited machine gun ammo, unlimited rocket launcher, but the problem is if you ended up using them in the B game, that would decrease your game score. So I kind of had to go through Leon A and Claire B over and over again so I can get Hunk. And then I eventually got Tofu, and I was able to actually beat Hunk's mission, but I can never beat Tofu's, and Tofu's mission was really hard because all you had was the knife. So even though Resident Evil 2 wasn't as scary as the first one, Resident Evil 2 is still my personal favorite game out of the first three because it was the first one I finished. I thought the flow of the game was excellent. There wasn't a lot of backtracking. It was still scary, but not super scary, but just right enough where I wouldn't freak out at night, because I know the first one definitely scared me in a lot of places. And also I thought the story was definitely better in 2. You had the relationship with Leon and Ada, then you had Claire and Sherry, and then you had the side characters like Brian Irons, the corrupt individual who was being bribed by Umbrella, and even all the files and stuff you got to read were definitely very interesting to read, although not as memorable as Itchy Tasty. And also, it had a lot of cool bonuses, being able to encounter Brad Vickers as a zombie, and then you had that picture of Rebecca you can develop in the picture room. And my personal favorite was the stars picture, and trying to identify everybody, although there were two I couldn't identify back in the day until Capcom said, yeah, this is Kevin and Edward Dewey. And also, at the time of this recording, I heard Capcom is definitely considering a remake of this game. And oh man, I'm so excited to play it. If it ever gets made. Yeah, so where can you get Resident Evil 2? I mean, it's still pretty cheap to pick up for, the PlayStation, the Dreamcast, and the PC. And the PC also has a battle mode, which is also in the Resident Evil 2 DualShock version. And you can definitely also get this on the PSN store, which I got. And it definitely works on your PS Vita, so you can play this game on the go. And there's also the really expensive GameCube version, which I don't really recommend. Yeah, so that wraps up this episode of Awesome Video Game Memories about Resident Evil 2. And if you have any memories about this game, make sure to leave those in the comments below. Take care.
Having fun? Well, you guys should totally go check us out at twitch.tv/BattleGeekPlus.